Okay, so the recording has started. Sharing my screen. So today's topic will be 1 second. Today's topic of discussion will be paper one, research aptitude. Now, before this session begins, I want to discuss something else. That is, a lot of you are quite concerned about. Yeah. So as I was speaking, a lot of you are very much concerned because your city has not been allotted, especially people who have English for their paper two. Please don't worry. Please don't be anxious because it will all be visible in your admit cards. So I would suggest everyone to focus on their studies right now. Regarding the allotment of your cities and admit cards, they will be declared soon. And please don't expect that your exam will be held on March. If it is held on March, then it is good. But we should take into consideration that February is also a possibility. So please prepare accordingly as if your exam is going to occur on February. Please don't take this lightly and please don't be anxious. Just focus on your studies and you will be good to. Many people are joining now, so I might be interrupted once or twice. Anyway, let's begin. So the first thing about research aptitude, before beginning, I should discuss the syllabus. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss in according to our syllabus. First is what is research, the meaning, types, and characteristics of research. Then we have positivism and post-positivistic approach to research. Um, Then we have several methods of research like experimental, descriptive, historical, qualitative, and quantitative methods. And if you have any questions, please do uh, unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me to open the Google Meet application and see the chats every time. So if you will have any question, please unmute yourself and please don't hesitate to ask. So as I was speaking, like research methods of research like experimental, descriptive, historical, qualitative, quantitative, and many more. Then we have to discuss about the several steps of research, then the formats and styles of referencing regarding thesis and article writing, application of information and communication technology in research. This is added newly in 2019 syllabus. And finally, research ethics. As always, I should mention that these are the topics that are to be discussed according to our syllabus. But we, in this video, in this brief video, we might not be able to cover every topic because of the shortage of time and because our exams are knocking at the gates. So we will discuss everything that I have determined to be of acute importance. So let's begin. So first, we have the meaning of research, the definition, and several characteristics. According to Redmond and Moring in 1923, research is a systematic effort to gain new knowledge. Simply speaking, research means a search for knowledge. It is a scientific and systematic search for information, not only information, of knowledge as well, on any particular topic or any particular issue. It is also known as the art of scientific investigation. So we can say that research is a process of inquiry and investigation. It is systematic and it is methodical, and it increases the knowledge among the individual and the general population. So the prime objectives of research are to discover. So now we talk about certain objectives of research. They are, first of all, to discover new facts, to verify and test important pre-existing facts, then to analyze any event or process or phenomenon, to identify the cause and effect relationships, then to develop new scientific tools, concepts, and theories to solve and understand many scientific and non scientific problems, to find solutions to scientific, non scientific, and social problems, and to overcome or solve the problems that occur in our regular life. Mind you, research, as the term suggests, is not confined merely to science and technology. There are vast areas of research in several disciplines, including languages, literature, history, sociology, etc. Whatever might be the subject, research has to be a very active, a diligent, and systematic process of inquiry to discover, interpret, or revise facts, events, behaviors, and theories. Applying the outcome of research for the refinement of knowledge in other subjects or in enhancing the quality of human life also becomes a kind of research and development. So, as we have mentioned before, give me a second. As we have mentioned before, that there are several types of research. So, these are the several types: fundamental, applied, descriptive, analytical, conceptual, deductive, inductive, qualitative, quantitative, empirical, ex post facto, etc. Now, one thing I want to discuss that these are several areas from where the questions might come. Okay, so it is wise that everyone at least has the basic concept about whatever these kind of researches mean. So, in case any question comes, we are able to, I mean, attend the question with confidence. Give me a second. So, the first kind of research that we are going to discuss is fundamental research. Fundamental research is also known as basic or pure research. I am not going to delve deep into the several subcategories or processes of these researches. I'm just going to give you a brief outline about the concepts of this research. Perhaps in later time, in another video, I will discuss how you can face questions. Like they will give you a situation and they will ask you what type of research this is. They can be one type, they can be both type, they can be several types at the same time. So I will discuss that in another video. This video is purely theoretical, and I will just describe the basic points about these several kinds of researches. So as I was discussing, fundamental research is also known as basic or pure research. Now, this kind of research, the objective of this kind of research is to generate new information, not a pre-existing information. No, the objective is to generate new information fundamentally. This is generally based on the principle of generalization, and sometimes it can be a lab experiment as well, a laboratory experiment as well. Fundamental research can take shape into two ways: either in the form of a new theory or the development of some existing theory. Whatever might be, as the term suggests, that fundamental research talks about the the outcome of a new kind of knowledge, the generation of a new fundamentally new principle, fundamentally new information. So even an existing theory is developing, even then a new kind of fundamental knowledge is gathered through a fundamental research. The next point is applied research. Now, you should know that the theories developed by the fundamental research are further applied to actual operational fields or populations. Now, what is the use of a research if it is not applied to the welfare of the humankind? Here comes applied research. Applied research is useful because it provides convincing evidence of the usefulness of basic research. Any theory that has been derived from fundamental research is analyzed in this part, and this kind of research talks about how that particular information that has been derived from fundamental research is useful to human society. This kind of research aims at the collection of data for verifying existing theories and models and helps to find a solution for real life problems or situations. Next comes descriptive research. It is the description of the state of affairs as they are in their own right. This means that the researcher has no control over the variables. The researcher should describe it as it is. Some of the methods that are used for descriptive kind of researches are field surveys or maybe interviews, case studies, etc. Now, what happens here, the researcher is maintaining a total objective viewpoint here. The researcher has to be objective because there is no place of subjectivity in this kind of research. Because everything here depends on the kind of information that are gathered through surveys or case studies or interviews. So the researcher has no control over the variables that are being derived. After that, we have analytical research. Here, the researcher has to do the analysis using logic and reasoning and previously existing data. This is usually kind of very in-depth kind of study, and this works under a set constraint of variables. And this also requires the use of critical thinking and evaluation. So, analytical research, what happens here? Here, the researcher gets the opportunity, the chance to be subjective. Because when someone is analyzing something, it is done from a particular viewpoint. And the work is done under a constrained set of variables. So, this kind of study is usually very critical, requires evaluation, and usually a very in depth kind of study. After that, we have conceptual research. Conceptual research is usually taken by philosophers or thinkers to reinterpret an existing idea. Let's say there is a theory. Let's take, for example, Marxist theory. Now, Marxism is an umbrella term, and many people have interpreted and reinterpreted the fundamentals of Marxist principles in many different ways. So, in these cases, Marxism is an existing idea. Marxist philosophy, Marxist economic theory, whatever you might say, that is an existing idea. Now, what the researcher is doing, they are actually rethinking the entire ideology. And although they use a conceptual framework, give me a second. Someone is trying to join. Although they are depending on the existing idea, the main objective will be to gather some new idea through the analysis. Now, this kind of research does not involve conducting experiments because this kind of research is very abstract in nature. Okay. Next, the next kind of research that I'm going to talk about is empirical. Now, empirical research is like it relies on observation and experience. And here, first, the researcher must formulate a working hypothesis. Let's say any formula of chemistry. Let's say the hypothesis of Boyle. Let's say. So when before Boyle's law was a law, it was a hypothesis. After that, based on experimental approach, we have deduced whether this hypothesis is correct or incorrect. This kind of research is known as empirical research. Mind you, empirical research requires that the researcher, before conducting the research, formulate a working hypothesis. The next kind of research that I'm going to talk about is deductive research. Now, deductive research is also termed as top-down or general to specific kind of research. And in this kind of research, a theory is tested with the help of available information. And this kind of research too begins with the formulation of a hypothesis. Next comes inductive research. This is called the bottom up approach. Deductive research is known as top down approach. Inductive research is known as bottom up approach. Here, theories are formulated and new ideas are explored. So, what is happening in inductive research? We are formulating new theories and we begin with research questions. Okay. In inductive research, we begin with research questions and new theories are formulated, new ideas are explored. But in deductive research, what we do, we test a particular existing theory with the help of available information. So in deductive research, we must begin with a hypothesis. Okay, next comes qualitative and quantitative research. Qualitative research is done to study the phenomenon that can be explained beyond numbers. That is, in a qualitative manner. We are determining the quality of something. The word qualitative comes from quality. And this kind of research is usually inductive in nature. And this kind of research begins with a social reality, followed by the construction of theory around it. So, first, we are taking a kind of reality, social reality, and after that, we are constructing a theory around it. Next is quantitative research, which is concerned with numbers. It is carried out to study a phenomenon that can be expressed in numbers. So, in qualitative research, number is not the focus point of focus, not the focal. In quantitative research, we are concerned with the number, let's say the number of participants or number of cases, and so on and so forth. Quantitative research is usually deductive in nature and begins with a given theory. So let's take statistical concepts. Any statistical data are used, are examples of this kind of research. After that, we have ex post facto research. Now, this term ex post facto, or in English, if we say after the fact research, is a category of research design in which the investigation starts after a fact has occurred without the interference from the researcher. This point is very important. In ex post facto research, the investigation begins after a particular fact has occurred without any interference from the researcher. This kind of research is usually used in social sciences and business organizations, and it deals with non-manipulated variables of a particular given phenomenon. So these are the several conceptual definitions of the several types of researches. Just remember the points that I have explained. I think that will suffice for your upcoming examination of paper one. Let's go move forward. Next slide. A few terms that I also wanted to explain that are related to research. First one is metaphysics. You have especially students of literature have came across this term many times, like metaphysics, epistemology, rationalism. Now, um, these are the terms that actually are related to research. So let's begin with metaphysics. Metaphysics, this word is derived from a Greek word that means after or behind or among the natural. Okay. Uh, Many people actually who have studied English literature might refer to metaphysical poetry and start asking that metaphysical means beyond the physical. Yeah, that's all right. That's absolutely correct. But here, in the branch of research, it means after or behind or among the natural. And metaphysics is a branch of philosophy, as we all know. Uh, it deals with abstract concepts such as the being, knowledge, identity, time, space, etc. So, in metaphysics, we study questions related to existence, what it is for something to exist, and what type of existence there are. So, it kind of asks questions like this: what is there, or what is it like? So, it is a kind of method that has been used many times by the ancient Greek philosophers, as we all know. And it is important to know this term in relation to modern research techniques as well. Next, we come to the term epistemology. Now, the word epistem, it means knowledge. Therefore, this is a branch of philosophy that is concerned with the study of knowledge itself. It deals with the origin, nature, scope, and methods to acquire new knowledge. This is considered one of the main branches of philosophy, along with other one I have already discussed, that is metaphysics, and there are others like ethics and logic as well. Now, this term, what is important to remember is that this term was first used by Frederick Ferrier. I repeat, Frederick Ferrier, Frederick, Frederick Ferrier, Ferrier. So, the term epistemology was first used by Frederick Ferrier. Please keep this in mind. This might be an important question in your exam. Okay, after that we come to rationalism. So it rationalism regards, as the term suggests, rationality or reason as the chief source and test of knowledge. It tends to believe that logic and reason are the means of acquiring knowledge, are the prime means of acquiring knowledge. And here, the human mind, is given authority over the senses. In this, logic and reason come first to conclude something before experience. This kind of rational, this kind of thought process, this is associated with deduction technique. Rationalism is quite opposed. It is worth noticing that rationalism is quite opposed to empiricism, because it believes that certain truth exists and that the intellect can directly grasp these truths. Speaking of empiricism, empiricists claim that sense experience is the ultimate starting point for all our knowledge, not reason and logic. Because the human senses give us raw data about the world, and without this raw material, there will be no knowledge after all. Empiricism emphasizes on the role of empirical evidence in the formation of ideas rather than innate ideas or traditions. It is a fundamental part of scientific method that all hypotheses and theories must be tested against observation of the natural world. And as it is quite opposed to rationalism, this kind of idea thought process is related to induction research. So rationalism is associated to deduction, empiricism is associated to induction. Next, we will talk about several research paradigms. So there are two kinds of research paradigms: positivist and interpretive. So positivist paradigm is associated with quantitative research strategies. Most scientific or quantitative research uses positivism as a conceptual framework of research. Positivists believe in empirical hypothesis testing. In pure sciences, this approach is preferred because of its empirical nature to study facts. Positivists believe that the findings of one study can be generalized to another study of a similar kind, regardless of whether it is conducted in a different environment or different situation. Now, the another paradigm that is there is interpretive paradigm. This is not associated with quantitative research strategy. This is associated with qualitative research strategy, and this is applicable lesser in scientific subjects and more in social sciences, such as, let's say, sociology or history or political science, etc. In this approach, the research design should be flexible and unstructured, and the method should be valid, and the research design should generate small scale and intensive data using insider accounts and based on descriptions of what is seen and what is heard. The next term is a German term. The term is Verstehen. The term is Verstehen. Now, this term is closely associated with the German sociologist Mark Weber. Many of you have heard about Weber. This term means, Verstehen means a systematic interpretive process in which an outsider observer of culture attempts to relate it and understand others. Now, this term, Verstehen, translates to, in English, meaningful understanding, or like, let's say a very common term, putting yourself in others' shoes to see things from their perspective, kind of thing. Lastly, our very important term related to research is theory. Theory is a set of systematically related statements, including law like generalizations, that can be tested empirically. Without empirical testing, a theory cannot develop. A theory can only develop after it is tested empirically. A plausible or scientifically acceptable general principle or body of principles that are offered to explain any phenomenon, is called a theory. Now, these kind of generalizations, they might not be specific, they might be very general, but they provide the hypothesis, and those hypotheses determine what should be measured and what should not be. Next, speaking more about positivism and post-positivism paradigms. First of all, positivist paradigm, this term, give me a second. Please keep your mics muted unless you have any questions to ask. Otherwise, it is very distracting, you understand. Okay, so the term positivism was coined by the French philosopher Auguste Comte in the 19th century, and it was reflected earlier or later by many other philosophers like Bacon, John Locke, Isaac Newton, and many more. This term, positivist, has no negative connotation. In philosophy, this term mainly adheres to the idea that factual knowledge is gained through observation. Any factual, any factual knowledge that is gained through observation is trustworthy. Positivism relies upon quantifiable perceptions that prompt measurable examinations. In this case, the role of the researcher is limited to data collection and objective interpretation, because positivists usually adopt a deductive kind of approach, and the concentration is focused on objective facts. The researcher here in this case is very independent, which what I mean to say is that the researcher maintains minimal interaction with the participants or participatory objects, and the kind of research done here is purely objective. And there is like one reality knowable within probability. This is something that is called about as research. Now, scientifically, positivism relies on a few aspects of science. That is, number one, they believe that science is deterministic, as science explains cause and effect relationships in nature. Secondly, science is mechanistic, as researchers develop hypotheses to be proved or disapproved via the application of specific research methods. Science uses methods such as the selection of samples, measurements, analysis, and reaching conclusions about the hypothesis. And one more, that is, science deals with empiricism, where it is assessed as objective, as seen or measured. Science, therefore, must be value free. Now, there are certain drawbacks of positivism. Now, number one, positivism depends on involvement as a legitimate source of knowledge and information. Number two is a wide range of procedures can be seen as a specific variety of activities of people or connections between people. Number three, appropriation of positivism in business studies and different examinations can be reprimanded for dependence on the norm too much. This depends on the particular norm too much, because positivism is a different kind of epistemology. And number four, positivism sometimes is just a rejection of metaphysics. Hmm. Yeah, positivism sometimes is just a rejection of metaphysics. It is a place that holds the objective of learning, which is simply to describe the phenomena we experience. So, positivism, as we can understand, is associated with quantitative research strategies. So, now there is one specific perspective on how research should be directed, which suggests that we should carry out research in social sciences in ways that are similar to the methods within the natural sciences. Those two are differences, social sciences and natural sciences. Not two people observe the same event, but they interpret and understand it differently based on their own experiences and their own beliefs. Therefore, objectivity can be achieved by using multiple measurements and observations and triangulating the data to gain a more clear conception of what is going on in order to determine a general rule. This is where post positivists come into play. Post positivists share a lot in common with positivists, true, but most of the research approaches and practices in social science today fit better into the category of post positivism. Now, since the inception of the 20th century, the focus of research shifted. Previously, the focus of research was every research was focused on reality. Now, research has shifted to critical reality or critical realism. Now, certain physicists, like let's say Niels Bohr or Heisenberg, focused on this kind of reality, critical reality. Here, the emphasis was turned away from absolute certainty to a probability. Because we know, people from chemistry, they will know that there is a rule called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what happens here is that there is no absolute certainty in the outcome of any research. Rather, this kind of new kind of approach, this new kind of paradigms, this focuses on probability. Now, the scientist was portrayed as a person who constructs knowledge instead of just passively noting the laws of nature. And no matter how faithfully the scientist adheres to scientific method researches, research outcomes are neither totally objective nor unquestionably certain. This approach was called up as post positivism, which it describes as a less strict form of positivism. This is not as strict as our positivist approach. Post positivists support the idea that social scientists and natural scientists, both of them, share the same goals for research and employ similar kind of methods of investigation. Post positivists tend to be distinguished from positivism whether the attention, as indicated by whether the attention is on the hypothesis verification or theory misinterpretation. In the case of strict hypothesis verification, we come to the paradigm of positivism, but theory interpretation, misinterpretation, or reinterpretation, we come into the paradigm of post positivism. These concepts are a little bit complicated, so I would suggest going through them as many times as possible. It will be good for you. Next, we will talk about the research process. Now, this section, there are several phases of a research. The first phase is the identification of a research problem. This section is important because this will not only help you with your net exam, but this section is also important because it will also help you in the formulation of your PhD or MPhil thesis, or probably writing your master's dissertation as well. So the first step towards any research is formulate one research problem. This is in the first phase. Phase 1, the identification of research problem. In this phase we have the first step, that is formulate a research problem. So here our goal should be clear, that we intend to achieve something out of the research. This actually is the most crucial step. This is the first step, but this is also the most crucial step to any research. The main function is to decide what you want to find about, because you cannot just research mindlessly, can you? The way you formulate a problem determines almost every steps that will follow in your research, because all other steps in the research, this entire procedure, will be influenced by how you identify the research problem. So it is extremely important that you should consider the time, cost, whatever expertise you need in the field that of research that you have chosen. This is extremely important. And the process of reviewing the existing literature in this stage will help you to understand the subject area better, and thus will help you to conceptualize your research problem clearly and precisely. So I have seen many people, they are appearing for a research interview or anything. What they do, this is a kind of tendency that they don't do enough literature review. So literature review is extremely important. If you don't have the sufficient knowledge about the topic that you are going to conduct a brief or extended research on, then your research cannot be proper. So this is the first phase where you formulate a research problem, and before the formulation of research problem you have to do an extensive literature review. What is literature review? It's just the studying of existing information about the area that you are planning to conduct a research on. Hmm? So in this case, sometimes you should also consider taking the help of a guide or a supervisor, because that is why supervisors and guides are there for. They are there to help you formulate your research problem. They are there to help you with the literature review. They will suggest that read these articles or that books. Okay. Now the second phase is planning for research and instruments. So step 2, second phase, is conceptualizing a research design. So once you have identified the problem, the next step is to identify what research gap is there. Because you have studied the existing literature, now you will try to find that there is a gap in this existing literature. So give me a second. Yeah. So after finding out the research problem, you will state that there is a research gap in this area. And you will also select appropriate methods, sampling strategy, and time frame. So this is a question that is often asked in PhD interviews or MPhil interviews. Whenever you are going, in fact, not only MPhil, PhD, in any research procedure you undertake, this is something that will be asked to you, that what is the methodology that you are following? Okay, so in order to, this is like a very big kind of question which is not very easy to answer, because sometimes we who research on a particular topic, we are also not sure what kind of methodology should be appropriate regarding our research. So first, after the identification of the problem, we will select the appropriate methods of research, certain sampling strategies, and the time frame of our research. Because if you don't design your research properly, or if you design your research like in a very faulty manner, it might lead to findings that are very misleading, and therefore your research will be faulty. So it is very important that you ensure that your selection of research design permits the accurate prediction of outcome under a given set of limitations. Yes, every research has its limitation. And while selecting a particular research design, you should have strong justifications and strong reasons for your selections. Okay, you should be aware of the strengths of your research, the weaknesses, the limitations, everything. After you have done that, step 3 will be constructing an instrument for data collection. So yeah, some kind of research don't require doing a survey and this and that, but all that is needed is what sort of information is required for a particular study, be it qualitative or quantitative. The construction of an instrument for research totally depends on how you are going to collect that data and the various methods around it. So the first practical step in this kind of study this is the first kind of practical step that you need to do in your process of research, and this will also require some kind of reliability and validation for the research instrument that you have constructed for the process of your research. Step 4 will be a sampling design selection. Now, sampling design selection is another crucial step in this process. The research result will largely depend on the category of sampling design you have chosen for your research study. There are three categories of sampling design: random probability sampling designs, non-random, non-probability sampling designs, and mixed sampling design, which will affect your strategies, and you must be able to select the most appropriate for your study by considering the strength and weakness of each along with their use. Step 5 will be actually writing a research proposal, the most difficult part. So, having done all the preparatory work, whatever you were doing up until now was preparation. Okay, it was just the preparation. Now, having done all the preparatory work, now the next step is to put everything together in a way that provides adequate information about your research study for your research supervisor and others and everyone. Universities and institutions may have different requirements regarding the style and content of a research proposal, but majority of institutions would require most what is generally accepted everywhere. So it should, like, your proposal should contain mentioning a few things. Number one should be the objective of your study, then list of hypotheses if you are testing any hypothesis, study design you are proposing to use, research instruments you are planning to use, information on sample size and sampling design, information on data processing procedures, the study's problems and its limitation, and the proposed time frame. Many of us have this tendency to ignore this time frame. Now, this is very important because in interviews, it's often asked that what is the proposed time frame of your research? Because your supervisor and guide might help you to understand that this kind of research will take this much of time, this is the time frame, but it is actually you who should be able to determine how much time it should take to conduct a particular research. Then comes the third phase, phase 3, actually conducting the research. So in this phase, we have step number 6, that is collecting data. So as a part of the research design, you have decided you have to select the procedure through which you should adapt in the process of collecting data. Here, you can collect data using several techniques like interviews, questionnaires, group discussions, surveys. Mind you, this kind of data collection is not very useful for students of, let's say, literature, because their kind of research is a little bit different. This is more related to other social sciences or natural sciences research. Now, many methods could be used sometime together to gather the required information. Like you can use both questionnaires and interviews to gather particular information, and you can think like you can only do focus group discussions for a particular gathering of information. There comes step number 7: processing and displaying data. Collecting that is collected through various methods, the data that you have collected. Now, they require different ways of analysis. Analysis will be quantitative for descriptive studies. If you want quantitative analysis, it is also necessary to decide upon the type of analysis that is required, okay, and how it should be presented. And finally comes step number 8: writing a research report. Now, institutions may have different requirements regarding style and content, as I have mentioned before. That there are two broad categories of reports. That is, number one, quantitative; number two, qualitative. Now, this writing the report, this step is the last and for many the most difficult step of the entire research process, because this report informs the world about whatever you have done, whatever you have discovered, and what conclusions you have drawn from your findings. Because throughout the research, you give a part of yourself, you give a part of your life. It's like raising a child. Doing a research, conducting a research is like raising a child. So, it requires, like, after you have done everything, when you are writing the report, the world expects three things from you. That is, whatever you have discovered, whatever you have done, and what are the conclusions you have come upon after your discovery, after your things that you have found. So the report should be right in an academic style and be divided into different chapters, sections based on the themes of your study. Lastly, I wanted to talk about thesis format, but before that, I will talk about Shodh Ganga and Shodh Gangotri. Questions might come from this section, Shodh Ganga and Shodh Gangotri. So, Shodh Ganga at the rate INFLIBNET, that is InflibNet. This is a center that provides a platform for research students to deposit their PhD thesis and make them available to the entire scholarly community in open access. Many of you might have accessed Shodh Ganga before. They have innumerable papers, research papers from researchers and scholars from different part of the country. So the UGC notification, that is minimum standards and procedure for awarding MPhil or PhD degree, regulation 5th May 2016. Mind you, regulation 5th May 2016 mandates submission of the electronic version of theses and dissertations by researchers in universities with an aim to facilitate open access to all the theses and dissertations done by Indians to the academic community worldwide. This deposition will overcome the serious problem of duplication of research, fabrication, plagiarism, and poor quality resulting from poor visibility and unseen factor in research output. So, uh, this word Shodh Ganga, Shodh Gangotri, Shodh, this word means research and discovery. And Gangotri, as we know, is one of the largest glaciers in Himalayas and the source of the river Ganges, which is considered one of the holiest rivers in India. So, the give me a second. Yeah. So the Shodh Ganga is set up using an open source digital repository software called DSpace. I repeat, DSpace. It is developed by MIT, that is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in partnership with HP. Okay. So the software is DSpace, which is developed by MIT and HP. Now, Shodh Ganga 3, now under this initiative, research scholars or supervisors in universities are requested to deposit electronic versions of approved synopsis submitted by research scholars to the universities for registering themselves for the PhD program. The repository, on one hand, will reveal the tendency and trends and directions of research that is being conducted in Indian universities, and on the other hand, it would also avoid duplication of research. So, Shodh Ganga is the full papers, the full thesis, and Shodh Ganga 3 is the synopsis. Okay, about the arrangement, layout, style, font, etc. This I intend to talk in a different video, because these thing actually requires a different kind of emphasis, which I am not sure that I should be conducting in this video. Nevertheless, the lecture notes that I will be sharing in the group, it will contain everything. You can see, you can check it, and if there is any question, you can definitely ask me. So this is more or less what we wanted to talk about in this video. Um, Another thing, that the application of ICT. So there are several users of the internet that are required for research. There are many sites, many websites that we don't know that they are very essential for research, like Google Scholar, Microsoft Academic Research, ResearchGate, BioHunter, Deep Dive, Wiki Journal Club, etc. So if we access these websites, then we will be able to access several articles written by research scholars. JSTOR is also one of them. So today, what I will do after this, after the end of this session, I will share a few JSTOR IDs with passwords so that you people can have access to JSTOR articles. I hope that will be helpful. And this was more or less what I wanted to talk about in this class. Thank you for your time and patience. And in the next class, I intend to talk a little bit about literature. So if I can manage, otherwise, given the short span of time, I think it is wise that we discuss paper one as much as possible. So keep these things in mind. I'll share the PPT and the lecture notes in the group. Go through them, and in case of any doubt, contact me. Rewatch this video if you need. I will upload it to YouTube and share the link by tonight. So so that's more or less about today's discussion. So I wish everyone a very good night. All of you, please do take care. And again, if there is anything that you would like to ask, then please do ask me personally, WhatsApp. And yeah, good night.